Okay. Whenever you're ready, Trevor. We're live. All right, it is 6 p.m. and I will call this meeting of Lunenburg Town Council to order. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Since it's our first meeting, I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce the newest member of our community development team, Lauren Isabel, who joins as a planner. And with that, I will look to council for a motion to approve our agenda, moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. That takes us on to the approval of the meeting minutes from March 28th. If I can get a motion to approve those as circulated, moved by Councillor Duggan, seconded by Councillor Birtles. Are there any errors or omissions to note? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. That takes us on to public hearings, presentations, and questions. We obviously have a public hearing related to the deletion of Schedule G vending from the land use bylaw. And the first item is an explanation of the ground rules of the public hearing process from the clerk. So I will turn the floor over to the clerk to deliver those rules.
Hi, everyone. So we are going to get ready to start the public participation of this meeting. So before that happens, our Director of Community Development, Arthur McDonald, is going to give two presentations. The first presentation will be about the land use amendments to remove vending from our land use bylaw. The second presentation will be about the proposed vending bylaw. After those presentations have concluded, we will be welcoming members of the public, both in the hallway, here and virtually, to come up and make any comments or questions. So we'll go one by one. So raise your hand and we'll figure out first come, first serve. Each person will have 10 minutes. And we ask that you direct all your comments and inquiries to the mayor directly, and the mayor may call on staff to answer specific questions. And we also remind everyone to please be respectful and cognizant of your 10 minutes. After everyone in person has had the opportunity, we'll then switch to anyone who's attending the meeting virtually. And for that process, we'll ask anyone who wishes to speak whose virtual attendance to raise their hand, and we will allow them in one by one.
Okay. And I'd add that we ask for the purposes of recording the minutes that you state your name and your address. As you reach the mic, obviously stick to the topic at hand and be respectful of others and their opinions. So with that, I will turn it over to the Director of Community Development to make his presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. And thank everyone for coming and participating in this public hearing process. My name is Arthur McDonald. I'm the Director of Community Development. And we're holding a public hearing to talk about proposed amendments to the land use bylaw to delete Schedule G from the land use bylaw. This originated from a motion to council on May 10th, 2022. And the motion is read, moved and seconded to undertake a planning report and draft vending bylaw, which would include a map showing permitted areas for vending and amend the land use bylaw to delete Schedule G vending. And that motion was carried. So this evening, I have a brief presentation to go through. If we can go to the next screen with regards to the public hearing overview, amendments to the land use bylaw. Thank you. Yes. So in order to initiate an amendment to the land use bylaw, a public hearing is required under the Municipal Government Act. The Planning Advisory Committee had a public participation meeting on February 27th. Council approved first reading on March 14th, and public notices for the public hearing were published in the Progress Bulletin on March 22nd and March 29th. The rest of my presentation deals mainly with the rules of conduct for the actual public hearing, which Kayla just went through. So I just want to outline that the proposal involves the creation of a new vending bylaw that will accommodate all the aspects related to vending within the town without the need for cross-referencing with the town's land use bylaw. Upon completion and adoption, vending will solely be regulated through the new vending bylaw, and the LUB land use bylaw will be silent in this regard. The proposed amendments is considered not to be contrary to any provincial interest statements as shown in my memo to council. We do have a motion for council's consideration this evening to approve second reading of the proposed amendment to the land use bylaw by deleting Schedule G vetting as outlined in the planner's report. That will be considered by council after the public hearing process. So at this moment, I'd like to just go into the actual amendment for the new vending bylaw. And if I could get that presentation up. As stated earlier, this is originated from a meeting of council on May 10th, 2022. It is council's intent to approve the adoption of the new vending bylaw at the same time as their approval to the amendment to the land use bylaw. Neither amendment becomes effective until the approval is published in the local paper. This report will focus on the adoption of the new vending bylaw. The amendments to the land use bylaw is dealt with under the amendment to the land use bylaw. The current vending bylaw is currently out of date and references provisions of the land use bylaw that no longer exists. In keeping with council's motion, it is recommended that provisions related to vending in the land use bylaw be deleted, except for the provisions dealing with yard sales, and consider the adoption of a new standalone vending bylaw that is not dependent upon the provisions of the land use bylaw. Next slide, if I may. It is proposed that the vending will be permitted in all areas that permit retail stores pursuant to the land use bylaw. Some institutional industrial areas have also been included to enable lunch trucks or mobile canteens to serve medium and large employment areas. So we do have a copy of the vending area map up on the screen that outlines the proposed vending areas. Next slide, if you may, please. The vending activities regulated by the proposed bylaw include craft markets and farmers markets, vending stands, mobile canteens, and mobile vehicle stands, door-to-door vendors, walking tours, busters, on-street vending locations, and all other vendors. Craft markets and farmer markets that are exempt by the vending bylaw include community, not-for-profit craft markets and farmers markets and their individual vendors. These would include community groups, which means a group or organization providing services or benefits to or for the citizens of Lunenburg County, such as, but not limited to, our great farmers market. Next slide, please. Vending within the vending area will be restricted to public and private property, and the owner's permission will be required as part of the vending permit application. It should be noted that vendors will be responsible to rent, lease space directly from the property owner, and this cost is in addition to the vending permit fee. Next slide, please. I just want to point out and show the proposed new on-street vending locations. And this This slide here shows the ones on King Street. So the proposal is to provide 2 vending locations on King Street, 1 on Blue Nose Drive. Next one, 3 on Tannery Road, and 1 on Green Street. Next slide, please. I also wish to note that all vending applications and requested vending locations are processed on a first come, first served basis. Provided that the conditions and terms of this bylaw have been met, the development officer will issue the vending permit to the applicant. All yearly vending permits issued under the bylaw will expire on March 31st of each year unless an earlier date is stated on the permit. For daily and monthly vending permits, the expiry date will be posted on the actual vending permit. Section 29 of the bylaw attempts to minimize impacts from vending operations and deals with hours of operation and nuisances such as litter, noise, lighting, traffic congestion, hazards to traffic, life or property, and from creating or becoming a public nuisance. The bylaw enables the development officer to revoke a permit for any violation. Council also has the ability to revoke any permit when it appears to be in the public interest. If any category of vending becomes a concern, council may, by policy, limit the number of permits that may be granted for a particular category of vending. Please note that the amendments to the land use bylaw are intended to be approved at the same time as the adoption of the proposed vending bylaws so that there's no gaps in the regulations. There is a draft motion prepared for council's consideration. That is my report. I turn it back to the chair, your worship, for the actual public participation for the public hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arthur. Before we begin, are there any questions of council about Arthur's report? All right. Seeing none, we will open the floor for the public hearing portion of the meeting. As we stated, the ground rules have been well established. And I'd also note for everyone that when you're at the podium speaking, you can see that there's a clock here, which staff will reset for 10 minutes so that you can effectively manage your time in terms of what you're permitted or allotted to speak. So the floor is open. So if anybody would like to raise their hand and come to the mic. Adam? Yeah. And just a reminder, to state your name and address.
Everyone, I'm Adam Bauer, 251 Victoria Road is my residence, Lunenburg. I just want to start off by saying I first heard of this a couple of meetings ago. Wasn't aware of this was going on, and I'm coming from a place of being a resident in town, someone who was born and grew up here and appreciates what makes this town so special. And secondly, as a business owner in this sector of the food and beverage industry, which this directly relates to, not only in this town, but heavily involved throughout the province on different boards and places I've worked and can bring some insight on both those perspectives. I got in this industry when I was in high school, and not to go on too long about that, but the reason I got in this industry is because I started serving tables in the restaurant industry here, and I developed a pride and passion for where I was from. That's what led me to go to school and make this my career, and I've been in it for 20 some years now. And that pride came from talking to tourists that came to visit town and hearing what they thought made this place so special, because you can often take it for granted growing up here until you move away and come back, or you talk to other people from the outside why they come here. And to me, what makes this town so special, and everyone that I've talked to since I was first in this industry in the 90s, was the history we have here that we preserved, and it's very unique and it's unlike anywhere else in the world. There's 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in the country. It's Lunenburg and it's Quebec City as far as town cities are concerned. And it's the preservation of this history that draws tourists and provides the tourism industry that we contribute to the economy here. And we're the tourism is the biggest industry here now. And that's what brings people back, is our preservation of the history. And as we know, that was naturally preserved from generations of families that kept their homes and kept them up here. And then we put in UNESCO to protect that and preserve what we had here that makes this place so special for generations to come. And where I'm going with all this is, my number one concern with bringing in food vendors and food trucks. And I'm not against food trucks at all. I think they play a big part of our sector and our industry. It's all about location and where they're set up. And I just see a lot of issues with where we've identified we plan on putting these in our town. So my number one issue is, there's a lot of concerns with different placements, but in the Old Town District, this is why tourists come here to what they come to see. And we have all these great UNESCO bylaws in place and heritage bylaws in place to protect and preserve our look here and what brings people here and makes us so special. And with a wide opening of any type of food truck being able to come here, to me, that takes away from what we preserved, putting food trucks in front of these historic properties and what brings the tourists here. It diminishes what we preserved. Our businesses, we're following the bylaws to blend them in with our community. We're following all the bylaws. We have wooden hand carved signs. They're not backlit. We're trying to blend in and not stand out in our community, and putting food trucks in this district would completely contradict that and go against it. Whether it's temporary or not, it's what the tourists are coming here for, and it's what they see and experience. Number 2 thing is generators. And I know not all food trucks use generators, but this bylaw doesn't protect that. So there's issue number 1, and number 2 is the generators. I know I did have some great conversation with different counselors on this, and we've had some great conversation. Unfortunately, it's leading right up to this meeting. It wasn't early on, but that's something we can change for the future. But generators, as far as I understand, wasn't on the radar. And generators create noise, diesel, and smell that take away from the tourist experience and our economy in this area. I'm not saying there's parts of the town that wouldn't work, but not as identified here. I had a tour guide. He works for Colette and Ambassadors. He's also a retired history professor. He made the comment to me, "Are you in favor of the food trucks? They're going to turn Canada's prettiest town into another Coney Island." And that's coming from a tour director who brings busloads of people here. The other thing is our restaurants, we make all our money in the summer for the most part. Most of us lose or break even in the winter. And it may not look like that on the outside, but it's an industry fact, which you'll hear later on from different presentations tonight. But it's this money in the summer that funds us to be able to stay open in the winter. I stay open, as most other restaurants do, for a couple of reasons. I want to decrease my turnover and keep people employed year round. And I want to provide a place for my community to come. If you think back to how many restaurants were here in the 80s, it's very different than now. And it's funded by the growth of tourism here that makes this such a great place to live and have such a great, be a culinary destination year round and a place for our locals to go dine. There's other issues to do with washrooms, parking and traffic. I will welcome anyone into my restaurant to use the washroom. And I always have. They're either a current customer or a future one. But putting food trucks without additional washrooms, and potentially, for what I'm hearing, taking away washrooms we're putting more pressure and expectation on our businesses that I don't think everyone's going to go along with. And that's another challenge. The only argument that I've heard in my conversations, to me, it's not growing the economy. It's not growing new jobs. It's not growing tax base. So I'm trying to understand where it's all coming from to put them where the potential they're put on the plan here. And the thing is I can't understand where it's coming from. And I just, other municipalities in Nova Scotia have gone down this road. Wolfville, for example, in 2014, allowed food trucks to come in. By 2016, they asked them not to come back anymore and put a bylaw in to prevent them. In HRM, even where there are food trucks, you'll hear later on, they're not putting them in front of other businesses and right in front of the restaurant sector. And so these are my main issues with this. And I just feel that we could have made better informed decisions here and had the conversation earlier on and talked about this at the beginning instead of getting to this point where it could potentially be voted in. So I thank you for your time and I know that Gordon Stewart here from the Restaurant Association of Nova Scotia can kind of talk about what's happened in other municipalities and ways it's worked and ways it hasn't. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay, I did send, my name's Christina Stubbs. I'm not a very good public speaker, but I'm here.
Sorry, Christina, could you just state your address, please?
20, number 6, Masons Beach Road, which comes off Tannery Road. This is the note I sent around to all the councillors, and thank you, Matt, for, I think, forward it on. But anyway, these are my notes and issues that I have about the proposed vending. As an ex-business owner too, I know exactly where Adam's coming from. You work really hard through the winter months to get the profits for the summer months, and you try and support as many people that you can work for you during that period of time. So, dear Mayor and town councillors, the waterfront area currently offers some breathtaking space and tranquility for residents, and as well as tourists who wish to have a moment to relax, reflect, have a picnic, or just sit and enjoy the view, which, by the way, they do all the time over the little park at Masons Beach Road. It is a pleasant area unspoiled by significant commercial activity. As a long-term resident and business operator in Lunenburg, I strongly oppose the subject proposals for the following reasons. Year-round tax-paying residents, me included, deserve some degree of privacy without being subject to extra traffic, unsightly food trucks, and problems sure to arise from such activity as already at the park, the overflowing garbage, which I purposely pick up after anyone has decided to have a picnic there. Even now on busy summer days, this activity already has a negative impact on the residents with the noise and fumes of engines left running as visitors jump out to take photos. And this is mainly from the tourists on the bus routes. When busy, the situation is often chaotic with drivers not adhering to the speed limit, which is already 35 kilometers an hour, as well as obstructing or ignoring signage. They park and stop at the stop sign and no one can see which way to turn. The community effect is sometimes intolerable for residents or people trying to walk with little kids or on bicycles. The ambience of this lovely walk from the town, which was created, is currently enjoyed by residents on a regular basis through high or low season, as well as this seaside walk is unencumbered by commercial activity, providing a peaceful and pleasant experience for more. Unencumbered views of the waterfront would be obstructed by lines of people waiting on the pathways to buy fast food or shopping trinkets, which we already have a beautiful abundance in the town of Lunenburg. The proposed activity will generate even more turmoil in this small area, creating an eyesore and destroy the tranquil ambience. As we have seen from the garbage from other fast food outlets, and garbage accumulates, pests, insects, rodents, raccoons are attracted to the area. Tell me they are there. They raid the bin right at the park every day. Despite being illegal, we find occasional overnight campers along the road, and this situation will be likely aggravated by the proposed development on the blockhouse from the new proposal of a blockhouse hill. The suggested proposal is completely unfair to existing businesses in town who work hard, as I mentioned earlier, year-round to be open and service our community, to now be forced to compete with vendors who pay a small portion compared to the year-long tax and burden that the town businesses pay. It would have been prudent of council to consult with residents and businesses as well in advance of such decisions. The town needs to consider more sensible alternatives to this proposal. And as I said, I'm supremely disappointed that it's got this far. And I had one of my residents come by and knock on my door saying, was I aware of this? And no, I wasn't. So I agree with Adam. We have to band together behind the businesses already here, not create more, making us look like some other place, because we're unique. Lunenburg is completely unique. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Christina. Floor is open.
Hello, guys. My name is Elsa Costi. I'm from Subway. I recognize some of my customers in here. My address is 160 Montague Street. Okay, I moved in here 12.5 years ago. We put everything that we had to move here, but that is just nothing. Corona happened, and that took everything. I tried to move my business open every single day to feed people in town, but the ones that were hungry, because for me, they're not customers, they are my extended family. Now, before times, summer feed my winter. Without my summer, it's impossible. And the summer is so busy, and thank God for that. But I don't get to see anybody. Why? Because it's so hard to park. They cannot wait in line for that. Bringing food trucks right in front on King Street, no 1 by 2. It takes more than 50% of what my profit that I can make to support myself. Not only that, tour buses. Have you seen the amount of tour buses go to King Street trying to go to Blue Nose Drive? They can barely make it. Now trying to put food trucks, people trying to stand in line to get served, trying to go around between the streets and the sidewalks to order their food. There is no place to park. This is insane. Another thing, our taxes feed this town. So for me, you are biting the hand who feeds this town. By you doing this, you're taking the piece of the pie that you should have. And you tell me that $600 these people are going to pay in the food truck for the season. It's the same amount of money that are we going to pay you guys the taxes? Really? Not only that, let's go to Subway. I need to use the bathroom. This one thing you have to concentrate. I'm not a public washroom. My washroom is a service for the people who come to support me. Just buy me a cookie. I'll be happy. Does it pay for the water, the heat, the toilet paper, the labor, whatever? It doesn't. But I give them an entitlement for them to use it, which I'm very proud of that. You should open your bathroom. You should be open this weekend. You know how many people tried? It was so busy. It was so beautiful to see this town alive again, but they didn't know where to go to the washroom. That's the way you have to consider. You know how much, I don't really bring it, the other lady did it before. How much garbage this comes. I pay for my garbage privately, not the town. I pay G Trucking to pick up my garbage, but there's garbage everywhere. And there should be more way that you have to figure out to bring more people in a nicely way. It's just create more parking spots for people to park. Little round buses to bring people every hour, half hour, whatever. But I don't know how much you guys are going to get from these food trucks to the town that we are not giving already. Mr. Martin, you see what he's doing? He is remodeling hundreds of thousands of dollars. he has spent to make his place amazing. And what's gonna happen? Food trucks is gonna take everything that he just gonna pay for that? Adam, honey, the amount of money he bought this big, huge building to renovate, have more people in, and you're gonna put food trucks. This is insane. Just think about us. The ones who make this part of this historical, beautiful town that I'm so proud. And you bring in food trucks. I'm sorry. It's just, I only need 5 minutes. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. The floor is open. I'm sorry, Adam, I can't let you go twice. No. But somebody can speak for you. Somebody can speak for you if you want. Someone in the right? Oh, yes. Catherine, come on down.
Go up a little. I get a little nervous public speaking, even though I am a little outgoing. So bear with me if I ramble a little bit here. Catherine Eisenhower, 134 Dufferin Street, owner of the Savvy Sailor Cafe, 100 Montague Street. I can't think that Adam could have worded his statement any better. Growing up in this town, I feel like, you know, anybody who has grown up in this town, as he had mentioned, takes such pride in being here, the uniqueness. I mean, I can just basically say everything that Adam said again. But, you know, things that I just want to hone in on, you know, in probably less than 10 minutes are what makes us unique is us. It's the way it is. You know, food trucks are not misplaced in every situation. I have no problem when there's a market and we have the food truck rally and they all come in, wonderful. If that were to happen on Blue Nose Drive one weekend of summer and, you know, the street was shut down and it was all a big thing, bring people, sure. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about taking away from my business directly. I do a large takeout business, which will be directly affected. You know, I understand that it's very frustrating to have to stand in a line for an hour and wait for a place to go for lunch, but I have never taken a food order for a takeout that has taken longer than 15 minutes. And that is any item on my menu. And for this coming into my 12th season, my entire menu has always been made available as takeout. Garbage is a pinnacle for me. It was mentioned before, in the month of August, 2022, I had 9 paid garbage removals that cost me $1,650 for 9 pickups because the town service is not adequate to remove the garbage that I create. So we're talking about a huge chunk of money every year to have garbage removed. The garbage that's going to come from food trucks is evident. It's always going to happen, no matter how many bins are around, the garbage is not always going to get there. Every single day, the first thing that I do in the morning is go to the bottom of the steps that I have on Blue Nose Drive and go to the top of the stairs at Montague Street and pick up garbage every single day since I have been open for 11 seasons. The amount that I'm going to be picking up and putting in my garbage to then get paid to have takeaway from the food trucks in this area is going to be outlandish. It's going to create, we already have rodent problems. I do my best. I have, you know, rodent control. I also get my garbage removed twice weekly. I am very stringent about, you know, what goes where. I hold things back if they're going to be particularly smelly, keep them inside, put them out only, you know, when garbage is going to be picked up. You know, I cannot emphasize the garbage enough. It's going to be a huge issue. You know, Adam mentioned as well about, you know, trying to operate. I operate 10 to 11 months a year. I close in January because it's like, it literally not feasible for me to be open. And it's very easy for people to make assumptions about the restaurants in this town raking in the money, but I can assure you that is not the case. That might be the case for 5 months of the year, and those 5 months are, as mentioned before, what feeds the business for the remainder. I try to reopen my doors after Christmas as quickly as possible to employ at least a certain number of staff. I take a huge amount of pride in being able to employ people in this town, and people in an industry that I am very passionate about. And this industry, as mentioned before, is the biggest driver for tourism in this town, for industry in this town, for employment in this town. The things that it brings to this town, we are so fortunate to have the restaurants that we do. So fortunate to have the people who put the money, the thousands, hundreds of thousands for some dollars into their buildings to make them look nice. I recently gave the Savvy a facelift after years of wanting to do it. But after COVID and after purchasing the building and mortgage payments, you know, finding the money, it slipped away over COVID. So, you know, it took another couple of years for me to get there. Having the building bright yellow and looking fantastic on the waterfront does not decrease the line or increase the line that I have in July and August trying to get into the door. What it does is make this town look beautiful. What Martine has done and Sylvie have done, what Adam has done, what countless of places have done in this town doesn't change the dollar figure at the end of the day. What it does is actually eliminate the dollar figure to make this town beautiful. And then to turn around and put in front of it a food truck with a noisy generator. You know, I understand that there's scents coming from every restaurant, so you can't, you know, fault a scent. But again, I think a time and a place, and in the core of Lunenburg is definitely not the time or the place. Anything else? I got a few minutes. Okay, I'm also incredibly disgruntled that there was no forethought by council to reach out to any of the businesses. You know, it's not hard to get a hold of any of us. A simple email, hey, this is coming up, there's an idea for this. I mean, it's communication was a platform that you all spoke about, and that I thought when I was voting was going to be, you know, paramount. I'm not saying, you know, you had to go way out of your way, but hey, this is coming up on an agenda. It might pique your interest. I don't have time in my life to read the minutes from every council meeting twice a month, especially during COVID, you know, feedback. It's hard. Life is hard for everybody. And, you know, you have been elected to be the voice of us. So give us a chance to tell you what we want. It's, you know, I'm incredibly disappointed that yet again, the communication has faltered in this. That's yeah.
Letitia?
Hi, my name is Letitia McFall, and I live at 201 Fox Street. And I've lived here for 8 years. And I came here because it was Lunenburg. I didn't move to Nova Scotia. I moved to Lunenburg. Like many people here have said, we all see this as a very special place with unique opportunities and challenges. And so, of course, we have to develop and we have to change. But we have to do it in a unique way because it's a unique place. And right now, having listened to all of this, there is a bit of a conundrum growing in my head, and I can't help but think that this issue around food trucks is the same issue that I remember and still is an issue in this town, and that's around Airbnbs. And I've actually heard people who own B&Bs say, we pay taxes, we fixed our places up, we follow all the rules, we have to do all the bylaw stuff. And then Our council will not even help us with the Airbnb, who leaves us with huge openings in the community around empty housing and not enough housing, et cetera, et cetera. And I have to say the food truck issue for me is very similar. It's kind of like we have good restaurants in this town that put money into the restaurant, follow all the resources, do all the bylaw stuff, commit themselves to hours and hours and hours of work and money. And all of a sudden we say, well, there's something new coming along. It's food trucks. So I think we should do food trucks, right? Which for this first time, actually, we're running after the train with the B&Bs because we didn't do anything at first, but we have an opportunity right now to do something. And if we have to have the odd food truck in town, we can do it right. We don't have to say we're going to just open it up to a dozen food trucks and we're going to put them wherever we want, or 7 or however many. And we're just going to let them, you know, they'll pay a little bit for, and that's how we're going to do it. We don't have to do that. We're going to end up at the same place with food trucks as we have done with Airbnbs. And I have to believe that this council has learned something from Airbnbs. You know what a difficult situation it is for this town. And I would hope that you really won't do the same mistake over with food trucks. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Allison and I'm the general manager at the Rum Runner Inn at 66 Montague Street. So I'm not coming at this from a restaurant perspective, although all the wonderful restaurants we have in town make excellent points. I'm here as a pedestrian safety portion. The current traffic situation that already exists in downtown Lunenburg is hard, especially as a pedestrian walking through. I also have to drive to work every day, so I see it from the driver's side too. Last summer, I was almost hit 4 times on King Street. One of those times I was with my daughter. She was in her stroller and it was the stroller that was almost hit. Adding food trucks to each end of King Street, they're going to generate crowds. They're not going to be mobile. They're going to create a block to the sightline of traffic for people coming into those intersections on those sides. People are going to be, oh, hey, is they going to the food truck? And then somebody's going to try to cross the street. We already have this with people who are stopping and taking pictures with the tourists in the summer, which is great. We know they want to enjoy it, but it already creates that confusion. And you're just trying to continue that and create a greater hazard to people. So have you guys done any studies or looked into what kind of impact this could have from a traffic perspective for how the sightlines are going to be impacted at these busiest intersections? This is places we could already be improving. Not to mention, it's extremely unfair to have all these food trucks come in and not have to pay an equitable price comparatively to operate that the restaurants are already putting into the town. It's hard enough for a business like that to stay up and make a profit line. Rum Runner used to have a restaurant. We don't anymore. It was not worth it for our bottom line. And that we were fortunate that there were so many other restaurants who were there to take up the slack. Yeah, something.
So I'll refer your question to staff responsible for traffic management. So either the CAO or the town engineer.
Through the chair. So in terms of the traffic issues you're talking about, I think at each of the proposed locations, it would be up to the winning proposal to propose how they're going to set up and stage their site. And as town engineer, I would review it, and safety would be a priority in everything, because we don't want the incidents in our town and we don't want them being created by anything with the vending bylaw.
I think probably King Street already has an issue great enough that it could be reviewed as is, just even with restaurant traffic lining up to get into restaurants where people are forced to walk on the streets, but the sidewalks are so crowded. So at this point, we already have the issue on King Street. We're not looking to compound it for King Street, Montague Street. Like that's already a really, really busy intersection right there. Yeah. No, I'm sorry, I lost it. With the restaurants who offer takeout, which is wonderful, and we actually are to the point where we tell guests, oh, hey, you're looking for somewhere to go have breakfast, go to the Savvy Sailor, they do takeout. You can call ahead, you can bring it back and you can eat it here in your room or on our deck. There's already options for people to do stuff like that. And we have all the seating that you guys put in down by the Fisheries Museum out there. So people can go down there to the waterfront and enjoy their meals. I'm not against having food trucks. I just think that the location needs to be a little bit more carefully considered and perhaps start smaller with one or two. So that way you get an idea of what the actual impacts are going to be on traffic flow in a given area as soon as they're open. Let them run for a season, see how it impacts the area before saying, okay, then it's feasible everywhere. Let's look at it and say, this is what happened here. How is that going to impact these other locations where we'd like to have them? Thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
Take a breath. My name is Amy Funk. I live at 103 Pelham Street. This room is terrifying to me right now. I'll just say that first off. I am the owner and chef of Shore Lunch Food Truck. Dare I even say that here? My partner and I built Shore Lunch at the South Shore Surf Shop and Garden Lots from the wheels up with our blood, sweat, and tears. We not only put tremendous effort into the construction of the food truck, but into its footprint and its integrity. Shore Lunch is a sustainable operation. Instead of a noisy generator, we run on an energy efficient lithium battery system on board with rooftop solar panels to power us completely. Our takeout materials are also 100% compostable. This means our food truck is silent and we put out compost bins for our patrons' used materials. Our business is also, if I may say so, stunningly beautiful. I am stating all of this because 1 year ago, almost to the day, I stood here before you, albeit a much emptier room, and proposed an amendment to the town vending bylaw in hopes of being able to park in Lunenburg. Oops. I am simply wanting to sell my fresh sushi bowls made with regional ingredients from local farmers that I've spent the last 9 years cultivating relationships with, to the overflow of people here in the summer months that simply cannot get into the lovely restaurants that we have in town. In that proposal, I suggested that the town include myself and other members of the local culinary industry in their discussions about the vending bylaw during its construction so that we could all plan it properly. This was not done, and what you see before you is the aftermath of that decision. The bylaws as written bring up so many problems and questions, and I can only shake my head and wish someone in the industry had been consulted. The fees must be fair, both the permit fee and the daily fee, and I am all for re-examining what that is. I get that this town is special. I have chosen it myself because I truly believe that. But we have a problem. There are thousands of people and not enough food establishments. Food trucks come in for when we need them and leave for when we don't. If we don't want loud, stinky food trucks in our town, then simply write a noise ordinance and a fume restriction into our bylaws. It is not rocket science. This will prevent the type of food trucks everyone seems to fear from being even allowed a permit. Food trucks are an entirely different business model than restaurants. People who want to go and sit in a restaurant on a balcony, have a glass of wine, and enjoy the conveniences of table service, they're not going to go and see a food truck and say, hey, let's go do that instead. They might if they can't get into a restaurant, but that's why the town of Lunenburg might need food trucks. Commercial property taxes are for owning land and having your business on that land 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Vending fees are paid to the town by temporary vendors for renting out a vehicle-sized plot of land for a number of hours per month. Everything in my food truck is bolted down. I have to pack up and leave at the end of every day. I don't get to be open in the winter, and I have to use my savings from the summer to survive while I too pay insurance, rent, maintenance fees, and loans. Food trucks have been proven to provide increased economic development into the future. The popularity of food trucks helps improve the local offering of foods by increasing the number of options that customers have, which is wonderful. Competition is very healthy for a thriving community. If we want to attract new businesses and younger generations to Lunenburg, we need to create an active and assorted food scene. Lunenburg is already the best town on the South Shore to eat thanks to the current restaurants, as well as the reason I moved here 9 years ago. But it fails in the diversity category at the moment. I know that the passing of this bylaw is asking the restaurant owners of Lunenburg to be generous and welcoming, but in the end, it is in everyone's best interest to allow both towns' residents and its tourists to have options. We cannot prosper in a society that denies its citizens the right to choose. In my letter to council, which is included in the minutes, I do include my opinion, of the spots chosen on King Street. They were not an intelligent choice. When I proposed this amendment, a year ago, I asked for Parks and Recreation for a reason. This all could have been avoided, and I hope there's a solution that works for everyone. You know, I'll not look at my paper for a minute. I moved here and I was the manager at Lincoln Street Food for 3 years and then the sous chef after that. And then I had a baby and I couldn't work till 11 p.m. anymore. So during COVID, I thought, you know, what business model could work for the little amount of savings that I have and for the culinary gift that I want to share and run a business that is beautiful and sustainable where I can still be a full-time mother. And I built Shore Lunch. I'm sure most people in this room know what it looks like and how it operates. I'm so strongly pro having, you know, a small footprint. I really do have no gas generator. You can't hear a sound. It's silent. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm a painter and I painted the mural on it. And I didn't mean for any of this. I didn't mean to like create this room full of like, I can just see pitchforks in everybody's hands. And I didn't mean to create like such a disturbance. I didn't mean to, you know, hurt people's properties or people's businesses. I just wanted a chance to offer something that doesn't exist here. It's a sushi food truck and it's you know, it's unique unto itself, and I just wanted a chance. And it just, the bylaws can include things that cut out everything that people have problems with. You know, there's a handful of food trucks on the South Shore that could even possibly be here. It's not like there's 100 food trucks waiting to get in. Like there's only a few food trucks on the South Shore of Nova Scotia anyways. And the bylaws can include a lot of things that can prevent the uproar and calm people's qualms. And it doesn't have to be like this. I really wish the town had gone about it in a way that had included the people of the industry and their expertise and come to a conclusion that wouldn't have upset so many people. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Looking for any other hands? Come on down.
Hello, my name's Graham Kerr. I live at 120 Tannery Road. I recently moved back to Fredericton. I moved from Fredericton back here. I'm from Lunenburg originally. My mother's from Lunenburg. I'm very invested in Lunenburg. Just hearing different things, I just think everybody has to be on a more equal playing field. Little upset the way people have found out very late about all these different things going on. My wife and I, we try to be involved in the community, heard very late of different changes. Since we've lived on the Tannery Road, and I think we've been there, bought the house about 15 years ago. 8 years ago, we did a major renovation on our house. We jumped through hoops. We had to come to meetings. We followed all different rules because it was going to be a proposed heritage area. We get that's changing, but what a change. We've gone from a proposed heritage area on the Tannery Road to now food trucks in front of our houses. In the picture of where the sites are on the Tannery Road, that picture's probably 6, 7 years old. Tannery Road doesn't look like that anymore. Those rose bushes are gone. That walkway on the other side of the rose bushes are gone. Now there's picnic tables there. There's a real problem with traffic. I retired a year ago, so I spent a lot of time on my front lawn. Probably too much time, my wife claims. But cars backing in and out of the picnic tables, which are used by people, which is wonderful. They're supporting our local restaurants and going there to eat, and that's what it's all about. We have a real problem with traffic on the Tannery Road right now. Tour buses, which is fine. It's the best place in the world to take a picture of the most beautiful town in the world. We get that, but that's a real problem. With the added congestion, it's almost dangerous. We've got the herons are back already. The ospreys are there. Our garbage, I literally have gloves in my barn, and every day I'm down picking up garbage. It doesn't help some of the locals fill the containers up first, and then people come to use the picnic tables. And I get it. The garbage trucks are there. They're there almost daily, but it's a real problem for us. And I just feel that it's going to be a lot of congestion and very, very dangerous. And I just can't imagine that there was ever a traffic study done before you people thought that you should put 3 on the Tannery Road. Just can't imagine that. That's all. I just wasn't going to say, but I thought I should.
Looking for any other hands in the room, and if there, oh, Martine.
Thank you. Oh, it's going, okay.
You turn the mic off.
Oh,
so-
sorry, it's probably better. Okay, thank you everyone for doing this evening. I just wanted to touch on a couple things. Obviously, lots of things have already been said by a lot of people and all great comments. I just kind of had a concern about a few things, and maybe I don't understand how things work. I know I've been in these events in the past. But on February 6th, I saw the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, and I contacted the president of the Board of Trade to ask what exactly did this mean as far as vending goes in the town, and what exactly the amendment to the land use bylaw deleting Schedule G was. So obviously I was concerned about food trucks. I'll be completely honest with you. So that meeting was on the 6th, and then the next meeting I think was the 27th. So I think on the 14th, I'm not sure. Do I ask you the question, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask through me and I'll refer
Okay,
to
so
staff.
Renee, I think, contacted the town. That was the previous director of the Board of Trade, and I think she talked to Arthur. And we were under the opinion, or the answer we thought we got was that the only thing happening at the 27th meeting was the passing of the agreement to cancel the section Schedule G. Is that correct?
I'd refer to staff, but having been at I think I was at the planning meeting, I do think there was mention that a separate report would be brought forward with respect to a standalone vending bylaw at that meeting. Am I correct in that, Arthur?
During the very next day, on the 28th,
Right,
it went to council.
exactly. The day after. That's when the map came up.
Through the chair, the vending bylaw.
Yeah.
Went to council on the
28th,
28th.
correct.
hearing.
So how could have anyone been against it on the 6th or the 27th if they didn't know what the new bylaw was going to be?
If I may, through the chair, you're confusing two different issues. One of the issues is an amendment to the land use bylaw, which only the planning advisory committee under its terms of reference can consider.
Right,
The planning advisory committee is not a venue in which different bylaws outside of planning documents go through.
okay,
But bylaws that are not planning documents go straight to council.
correct. Can I use an example of the past or no? For instance, a few years ago, I think it was probably 6 years ago, they had a planning advisory committee to get rid of using a lounge license at the Zwicker building. So clearly the vote on that is pretty simple. If you vote to get rid of it, you know what will happen. There'll be a lounge at the Zwicker building. But with this amendment, we had no idea what was going to happen. And the next day, we then find out that it's already gone to council, the new bylaw. So there was no time to address this bylaw until tonight, which is in fact the night that it could pass in council.
So I'd just let you
Sorry.
know how the normal process works, Martine, is
Yeah.
that all bylaws are required to go through first reading, which was what happened, I think, on the 28th, if I'm correct. I don't think I was here that meeting. Yeah, right, I was gone. And then that leads to them, like, because it could be killed right there.
Right.
And then that leads to an advertisement for second reading and public hearing, which requires a certain number of weeks,
Okay,
which is what we're leading here to tonight. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
just note that the bylaw is a proposed bylaw.
Right.
Council could pass it tonight,
Yeah.
it could vote it down tonight, it could defer it tonight, it could do any number of things.
okay, so basically there's no way for anyone to see that until the 28th. Is what I'm saying.
When it was introduced, well, it would have been
Exactly.
out a week before the 28th in the agenda package, if I'm correct. Because normally our agenda packages would come out a week before the meeting.
That is correct, yes.
So the map came out a week before the 28th?
It was in the council's packages, which are put online roughly a week before council.
It was brought out on the 24th when it was released on Facebook, if I may say so.
Okay, I can sense the temperature going up in the room, so I'm just gonna ask everybody to remain calm. What I was saying is that generally,
Okay,
agenda packages for council, in order to give council sufficient time to review them prior to their decision making,
okay,
are attempted to be out about the Wednesday before the Tuesday council meeting.
okay, that's fine. All right, I mean, I just feel that on this issue, this one specifically, there was a lack of transparency and also, reaching out to the Board of Trade. I know there was there was an issue basically that was, we didn't get it until March 1st. I know that at the Board of Trade. So anyway, we'll move on from that. Basically for us, my wife and myself, we moved here in 2003. So this will be our 20th season here in Lunenburg, originally from Halifax and other spots of the South Shore. Just want to say we love it here. We enjoy it. We enjoyed everything we've done. Like other restaurants and stuff, we have put a lot back into our own buildings. And obviously that is different than, just the ability to drive in here in the busiest time of year and set up a food truck. I know we spoke about garbage and at the Fish Act alone last year, I spent 11,000 on pickup. At the deli was 15,000. Between property tax, electric, sewer and water, we're probably looking at, close to 100,000 as well. I mean, those are big numbers that we're spending, and we feel that a qualified person to just arrive into town and just to set up on public property, taxpayers' property, and to be facilitated by taxpayers in Lunenburg, we feel we're getting the raw end of the deal. we've just gone through COVID, as colleagues at Subway spoke out about. And, you know, for the last 2 years, 2 years prior to last year, we had limits of how many people we could seat in our restaurant. We had limits of, you know, basically hours. It was a gong show, not to mention the amount of staff that we did not have. One I think that was lost in this whole process was coming to the restaurant community and asking how we're doing this year. Every single staff member of mine and my wife's at the Fish Shack is coming back, every front of the house. Deli, same exact thing. Beach P will be open again, same schedule. Adam's adding 80 seats to the town. He's bought 2 houses. I've bought a house as well. We have foreign workers coming in, not temporary either, year round. I had 126 employees last year. We did, my wife and I. This year we have hopefully more. And we lose a lot of money. I know it sounds crazy, but we lose a lot of money between December, January, February, March. And to be honest, we could close. I could pay all my management staff and close for those months, and I would do better than being open. And we stay open, number one, for our staff. Number two, for the people of Lunenburg who moved here and want to enjoy, you know, something throughout the winter. And you know, a lot of people used to leave Lunenburg in the fall and go away for 6 months, and then it stayed till about Christmas, and then, you know, it almost stayed till end of January, and people tend to go away only for 3 months now. And we like to think ourselves and the Grand Banker and places that have stayed open year round, Savvy Sailor as well, you know, that have made this decision for people to stay. It's not a competition thing. It really isn't. It's hard to believe, but I mean, I think everyone on Montague Street in this town has gotten together fantastic. I recommend every restaurant on Montague Street. Every place has its spot. Dockside, J3, you know, everyone has their niche in this town. And just to allow people just to drive in and a Green Lizard and sell tacos, it makes no sense to us. And, you know, I really believe that if someone had reached out to the residents, to the business community, we wouldn't be in this spot. And anyway, that's all I have to say, but hopefully you vote properly tonight, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Martine.
Your worship, councilors, city staff, good to be here tonight. My name is Gordon Stewart. I live at 135 Eisner Road, one of the 6 in Lunenburg County. And I'm here, I'm with the Restaurant Association of Nova Scotia. I sent a note to the council because I've been down this road many times before with many communities across Nova Scotia. And it's not an easy task to do at the very best of times. And this, of course, is not the best times for the restaurant industry. If I can, I'll give you a little snapshot of that, and then I'll bounce back into where we're going. So the section of time we're in now for restaurants is in actual fact the hardest they've ever been in Nova Scotia, right across the board. We were better off during COVID than we are now because we had safety nets. We had loans, we had grants, we had salary reimbursements, we had all kinds of things that helped restaurants out. Now we're into a section of our industry that is full of change, and change a lot of people are not ready for. We've had 35 restaurants closed since January 1 in Nova Scotia. That will continue at a very rapid pace as we move on. And the reason why is because restaurants have gone through so many changes dramatically. Food prices increases insane. Insurance prices insane, like everything. The labor issue and shortage, you work shorter hours, shorter days. At the end of the day, there's less money to pay the bills. They have to work that much harder to be able to do. So that's the snapshot of the restaurant industry. That should not take away from the conversation about food trucks. There is a place for food trucks. There's a culture around food trucks, and it's important to embrace that. Our association, the Food Truck Association, is members of ours. We have lots of food trucks that work out. But getting it right when you go out of the gate, that's where the problem lies. And you can see communities in Nova Scotia that did not get it right out of the gate. They didn't have the right framework. They had the wrong terminology. They didn't have the right kind of mix that they were looking for. Locations was like number one issue of everybody that faces that you're facing here to the locations where you pick them. So there is this opportunity to build, but I think that in the end, what you really want to do is find that balance. And if you go around Nova Scotia, you'll see changes. Halifax is a good example. Halifax just had this thing with the food industry like that. They were head right on. And of course, if you look at the first scenario in Halifax, they had two sets of places where they put food trucks. One right in front of restaurants and then one away from restaurants. The ones that are away from restaurants are still there today. Those people have survived and lived. The ones in front of restaurants, they're all gone. And they're all gone because it didn't work out. They had noise problems, gas problems, anything else, but it just wasn't a good mix overall. They had food trucks beside patios, restaurant patios, because that's a whole different thing in this world now. Patios is a great thing for restaurants as more and more people, and you'll see more of that growth. I'm surprised you don't see people applying more for patios out here. So you'll probably see that somewhere down the line. So getting it right is good. Some people did the switch, and I think you've seen Kentful did that. They opened up for food trucks, and then 2 years they just shut it all down and got rid of them. That's not the answer either. The answer is to get that up front where you want to be able to go, get the terminology right, get the mix right, get the locations right, test it, research, find out, talk to people. All those things are really important. And I can tell you that I think in my note, I raised good and bad points as it came around, because there are good and bad points about everything. But the restaurant industry is a tough industry overall. And the food truck is a tough industry. I have a daughter who had a food truck, and they worked hard at it, but eventually they gave that food truck up, and they probably lost their shirt on. So it's a difficult business. And so is the restaurant a difficult business. But I think during the timing of all this, and I think that's an important key issue here, is that you're introducing a new piece of legislation that will have impact in the community, but most of all, it's going to have impact on some operations here more than others. And I think that has to be kind of balanced, but I don't think you should throw out the baby in the bathwater. There's room here for food trucks. You just need to find the right locations, the right spots, and then adjust if you have to adjust overall. And, you know, I'm saying today you kind of almost need a Senate here. You need that sober second thought to rethink some of the legislation. I mean, I've read through it, and if you want, I can offer comment, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to offer comment on your legislation here tonight, but I'd be more than happy to at any time if you want to follow up. I think you really need to kind of rethink, push that reset button and rethink it and put it back together, and you'll end up, I think, with better legislation. I think you'll end up for betterment for your community, both whether you're in the fixed restaurant or the food truck side. It would be better overall. So thank you. I noticed, by the way, in most municipalities that I speak on this issue, I only get 5 minutes, but in Lunenburg, I get 10. So I felt really honored, but I'm still giving 5 away. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon.
Hi there. Thank you, everybody, for allowing everyone to speak here tonight. I am not gonna, my name is Michaela Callie-Sharan. I represent my family's business and my brother Alex Pittman of Alex Chill and Grill and Nikki's Pit Stop over on Victoria Road. I live in Blue Rocks. I'm not gonna.
Can you just give us your address for the minutes?
Sorry, 958 Blue Rocks Road in Blue Rocks. I am not going to come up here and revoice all of the concerns I've been hearing from our colleagues. It's been great to see such a great turnout on an issue that obviously Lunenburgers are passionate about. I also I'm disappointed to see how things have been run. Last year, when there was a presentation by Ms. Funk, it was a beautiful presentation. This wasn't meant to create a divisive attitude for business owners. Business is business. We all want a fair, level playing field to operate here in the town of Lunenburg. After the presentation last year, this speaks to what Martine was mentioning, that the communication, the transparency offered by council to the business owners and the high stakeholders here in this town has created quite a lot of people feeling silenced and therefore angry. And looking at these type of changes, there's good and there's bad. So last year when the presentation was here, like we listened, we had a meeting with Mr. McDonald, and we were given the impression that things would be communicated to the business owners. And so throughout the fall, if something new was going to come into play about food trucks or any kind of vending bylaw, we were told there was an appetite for it. So we waited. I kept monitoring the council meetings, things that were released on Facebook, social media, which 90% of people will read. Not many people read the paper anymore, but there is a place for that as well. Anyways, we heard nothing until the 24th when it was released on Facebook that the agenda package for this first reading was released. And that's the true date that the public was made aware. Then there was a meeting on the 28th. They passed it. There was no communication to the businesses. We all felt silenced. We especially felt silenced. Now, that's speaking to how there was no transparency. We were upset. The other part of this is that my brother's business, Alex's Chill and Grill, is at the brunt end and the trial area for food trucks in this town. Last year, when we had 2 food trucks that have operated, we also have the food truck rally, the craft festival that happens over there at the community center. You can tell clients to please use our garbage receptacles. They don't. The amount of money that we have to spend extra on top of our own garbage, our private garbage removal, because our own facilities can't accommodate, was astronomical after these events. Even though some items are compostable, it's still garbage and it still ends up in our receptacles. My disabled brother goes there every day and cleans them out every day. The other part of this is, like I mentioned, about the level playing field. We're not saying it's not competition, as Martine has mentioned, it's not competition. We're all here. There's almost 30 restaurants in the town of Lunenburg. There's lots of places to eat. And since COVID, every single one of them, maybe a few who don't, offer a takeout option. There's lots of places to eat, beautiful picnic tables that have been erected finally on Tannery Road, one of the most beautiful places in Lunenburg. But it's all about a level playing field. And for anyone to just roll into the most beautiful parts of our town, set up shop, like everyone has said, and pay next to nothing compared to what we have invested into that area of town. And we're on that end of town. We have our own problems. We have our own issues of getting clients to come to that section of town. It could be buzzing downtown. And we have lots of space available in our restaurant, free parking. And yet people want to stay downtown. That's fine. The other issue to this is it talks again to the transparency of the town. It says within the bylaw that the town will take into consideration businesses that these food trucks could impact. You won't serve the same kind of cuisine, and in location would also be considered. We were not considered in that last year. The only way we knew that the food truck would be set up was 50 feet from our door. And the only way that changed because we said something. Nobody came to us. We didn't feel that the town had our best interest in mind. And that's really frustrating. And it is disappointing, as many people have already voiced to that. The almost $20,000, in just sewage, water, and property taxes. Last year alone, we paid over $17,000 for that location for property taxes. How is it fair that we're paying almost $70 to $100 a day based on the amount of days we're open per year? How is that fair for $2 a day, $3 a day, the $2,500 a year? That doesn't even come close. Like I said, level playing field, fairness, competition is competition. We welcome competition. It brings diversity, it brings all kinds of people to the area. I truly believe that the way this was handled, the way that this came to light has been incredibly disappointing. And like the Restaurant Association has mentioned, tabling this, changing it, anything is better than just passing it tonight. This would bring, and I apologize to someone who's trying to run a business, a mother, I understand, but it's that level playing field. This town has not had a food truck for many, 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 many years, and for a reason. We're trying to uphold our beautiful town, the UNESCO status, the permits that the businesses have to put in place to stick with the facade of Lunenburg. The past CAO even told us it's a privilege to have a restaurant, to have a business in this town, and therefore we must pay for that privilege. And so all businesses here did that. And I'm not saying the community council making presentations isn't doing that, but it's not at all fair in terms of cost. The hundreds and thousands of dollars that have been put in place. It's tough out there, but this town is this way for a reason. People love this town for a reason. And I hope council considers that. It's not that we don't want new business. People always say people who are from here and we don't like the come from a ways. That's not the case at all. They bring the vibrancy, they bring the newness. We love it, we want it, but they're coming here for a certain reason. And I would love to uphold that reason. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. Allison, you want to speak? Yep. Yeah, turn them, there's a button right there, Allison, and just note your name and your
Hi,
address.
everyone in the hall. My name is Allison Strawn. I live at 46 Lauren Street in Newtown, Lunenburg. I'm not here for myself. I don't own a business. I agree with everything that's been said. I'm here because, well, Houston, we have a problem and it's communication in this town. I spent the better part of Sunday, Easter Sunday, with my neighbors, Ben and Roxy, and it was like an anxiety-filled meeting. I turned it into an interview and I published an article about it. And they are truly gems in this town. But why they found out about a food truck parked across the street from them in a potential bylaw from social media, I can't comprehend that. I don't understand it. I don't understand where the respect is, why it would even happen. And beyond that, I went and walked the site. I sent you all an email this morning showing how inaccurate that plan is. It's Exhibit D or Appendix D or something. It's actually going to cost money to build the landing pad for this food truck or whatever truck ends up there. I understand this could be selling clothes or whatever it is. Anyway, I'm not going to take up any more time. I know there are other people and other things to do. But I just wanted to share with you something that I didn't put in my email, that Heather didn't put in her email, that Mr. and Mrs. Weinach's daughter didn't put in her email, that followed on all the emails that were happening today. And it's that as I was leaving Roxy's house, and she's been very active in the health community in this part of the province and actually throughout the province in her voluntary experience, she said, I think of the children. I think of the families that will come here that will have pressure to buy something for their children because some other kid has it. I think of the children running out in the street, not knowing that there might be a car coming. That's the community. And I think that's the community that's been ignored. And I really think that this town owes a big apology to our incredible senior citizens that are spent the whole weekend experiencing high anxiety. And that's all I have to say.
Anyone else in the room before I go to the hallway and online? Seeing none, I think I see Ollie at the door. Ollie? We'll start with Ollie, and Kayla, if you just want to go see if, or Michael, yeah, if anybody wants to come in one at a time.
Oliver Osmond, 93 Buena Vista Court. I think it's completely clear from all sorts of comments, both those submitted and part of the agenda package and speeches people have made, that this proposed bylaw is a mess. It is, however, a good idea to try and have such a bylaw. And there have been problems in the past with people who've set up in an unauthorized way, and it hasn't been very easy to deal with them. So I am in favor of the basic notion of there being the bylaw, but it shouldn't pass, I trust, in its present form remotely. One of the concerns that I think we all have and are aware of is that, yes, there are a collection of excellent restaurants, but at the height of summer, and particularly on certain weekends, those restaurants simply cannot meet the need for all the visitors to eat. I suppose the occasion when this is most apparent is over the period of the Folk Harbour Festival. So it does seem to me that it's completely legitimate to have some form of regulation which would allow other vendors to come in at least on certain days. That is very different from the idea of people who could come on any day at all throughout a year. And I think there's a lot of questions about the particular locations, and I don't need to repeat all the things that have been said about the unequal playing field with the restaurants or the garbage, though I may say I can speak from much personal experience about garbage because I lived for over 20 years on a very main road, about 3 minutes walk from 2 takeout places and a bus stop at the end of our driveway, and there was constant garbage. And once I actually gathered a complete bag, big plastic bag of garbage from the fish and chip store, and I took it up and showed him that this was at least regularly about half a week's garbage from his store. So, you know, and people have spoken to that. The provisions at the latter end of this proposed bylaw sound absolutely lovely. They provide all kinds of things that should deal with concerns about garbage and everything else. But I would have to say some of them are in absolutely direct conflict with the proposal about at least some, and perhaps mostly all, of the locations. You may wonder, some of you, where on earth 93 Buena Vista Court is. Well, it's just up between 110 and 120 Tannery Road. I'm not on Tannery Road, but I access my house through from Tannery Road, so I know the situation in Tannery Road well. It says, for instance, a vendor must not increase traffic congestion or delays. Well, now it is impossible for a food truck of any description to locate and have business and not result in traffic congestion or delays. So what's meant to happen about that? And on Tannery Road, we have, I think, the worst blind corner in this whole town, where long before the invention of the internal combustion engine, and I drive an electric car, a house was built right into the corner and you cannot see coming by it. It is extremely difficult in the summer. It's fairly difficult the rest of the year. And directly along from that corner is a whole section of Tannery Road with no sidewalks. And this council had a proposal, or not you people, but some of you were there, for sidewalks along that section, and the proposal was discarded largely because it was expensive, but partly because it wasn't the ideal solution. We don't want extra people walking along there and extra traffic because there's going to be food trucks. A vendor must not create any hazard to traffic, life or property, provision N. Well, you know, you can't at least there have a truck at all without doing those things. A vendor must not create a public nuisance. That's a crazy provision in a bylaw. How do you assess whether it's a public nuisance or not? And provisions E and G appear to deal with litter, but we've been told, yes, it doesn't work. Because however well the person who's selling tries to deal with litter, there's going to be problems. In short, this is a mess. It is very regrettable that, as many others have said, that proper consultation didn't happen previously. But given that it hasn't happened properly yet, it needs to happen now, and I trust you'll have the good sense to park this somewhere and not pass it tonight.
Thank you, Ollie. Just as a matter of clarification, and I'll look to the Director of Engineering, but my understanding is the town does intend from the school to roughly, I would say, light ship to add a sidewalk on Tannery Road this year.
Through the chair, yes, that is an item in the capital budget from Kinnickle Road up past to where it opens up on the waterfront where the rock wall is. Yes.
Thank you. Michael, do we have anybody else in the hallway?
Good evening. My name's Sam. I represent the Lunenburg Board of Trade as the Vice President. I had a number of remarks planned. However, I believe most of the business community has spoken to them this evening. Really what I want to echo is the disappointment in coordinating with the Board of Trade and the business community to create a plan to make a better suited vending bylaw. I understand it affects both food trucks as well as other aspects and other vendors and the business community as a whole. And we want it to work. We want to work alongside you to revise this plan and make it a success going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Yep.
Oh, I forgot to ask Sam for his address. Michael, if you can just get that for Kayla for the minutes. I forgot to ask Sam for his address. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ruth Ann Witcher. I live at 152 Tannery Road in Lunenburg, longtime resident of Lunenburg. I was somewhat relieved when I heard Graham Kerr, a fellow neighbor, point out that the map was old, because when we heard about the proposal, we were sitting on the porch and lo and behold, that blue spot was right at the end of my driveway. And at no time, council, did we nor Roxy and Ben Smith come to you and ask that we stroll down the driveway to buy a bag of chips. Thank you.
Anyone else from the halls?
My name is Stephen Zubalik, and my business is at 263 Lincoln, down here on the corner of Lincoln and King. When it was started as Laughing Whale Cafe 20 years ago, I proposed putting a hanging sign out in front of my building on the corner. It's going to be 9 feet off the ground at the bottom, but I was told I was going to interfere with sight lines. So I couldn't do it for traffic reasons, but apparently you can put a food truck at ground level right on that corner and there's no problem. I don't know, maybe traffic laws have seriously changed in that period of time. I've got to say some other things about impacts to specific businesses. I will go from the very specific to the bylaw itself to kind of the overall context we find ourselves in. The town does not have enough bathrooms. And what you're going to do to the people who have food trucks parked outside of there, you're going to have people coming in even greater numbers to use their bathrooms and their facilities and to sit in their sidewalk seating that they have put out there for their own customers. And there's no recompense for this. There's just going to be a loss that we absorb, right? The bylaw itself, you're going to pull in how much? $1,750 in fees. How much garbage collection is that going to accomplish? How much are you going to pay for that? And who's going to subsidize the other tens of thousands of dollars in disposal fees that these trucks are going to generate? As to the bylaw itself, it's extremely opaque. There's no guidance as to how you select a business, a truck, one over the other. Whether there's tenure from year to year. It's absolutely, there's no description of what you're trying to accomplish, even by doing this. And there was never any discussion that I saw in the public until this tonight, where these issues were even voiced. And I've got to say, in the larger context, that from the multiple sales of land and the way forward that this council seems to be going by pushing away or giving up the electric utility. We're coming into climate change. People are going to have electric cars. You want to have control over how things are put, how those cars are hooked up, how services are provided. You're just washing your hands and pushing it off instead of trying to amalgamate with the town of Mahone Bay, try to get a bigger municipal utility district to help lower costs and provide better service. You're going in the opposite direction. Now you talk about selling off the campground.
Steve, I'm just going to stop you there. I'd appreciate if you keep your comments to the, you're perfectly willing to make whatever comments to councilors you want, but for the purpose of the public hearing here, we're discussing the vending bylaw.
But it's just that context that in sale of the parking lot. So there's going to be less parking. Parking's going to be more expensive because the campground's not there. We have to raise fees. And now we're going to have increased competition. And we're going to have to subsidize food trucks. And I got to say, and this is going to sound harsh, but I want you to think about it when you go home, is what good are you? Seriously, to the people of Winterton. If your
Thank you,
way
Steve.
forward is to
No,
raise
Steve,
money-
thank you.
raise money to support the status quo with no real vision, then there is recall.
Steve, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you. Anyone else? Irma? Hi.
I'll be really short. My name's Irma Dassey. I live at 106 Pelham with my husband, Stephen Richards. Just to put another resounding no to this bylaw, because I'm an architect in town and I have a very strong desire to ensure that council maintains the architectural character and the unique character and the architectural heritage of Old Town. So the fact that you are putting food trucks, even thinking about it, is just ghastly to me. And considering this went to a second reading, my question to all of you councillors is, on what alternate reality did you think that this would be a good idea? So I'm really pleased that there has been a resounding no for this. And I would, as a resident of this town, I expect more from our elected officials. I expect you to do your due diligence and consult with people, be available for people, let people know what's going on, and just do a much more better job at governing for the people of this town. Thank you.
I'm just going to weigh in before I call the next speaker that. Sorry, Michael, just hold on a second. I'm going to weigh in before we call the next speaker that respectful disagreement with council's proposed policy and bylaws is welcome. That's the purpose of these exercises. But I'm not going to let them deteriorate into a council bashing session tonight. And so the next person who makes a comment that is out of line, I'm going to order out of the building. And I have that right under council's policy and under property law. So, respectful disagreement is welcome, but no bashing. Michael, is there anyone else in the hallway? All right, then we've got the last space we've allowed for people to weigh in is online. So I'll just go to Trevor to see if we've got anybody online.
And they should raise their hand now. I've now enabled raising hands and we'll go through in the order that they appear. We do have one and I will put them on now.
Ed, can you just turn off that mic? Because I know it's hard to get sound if too many mics are on. Going once.
Hello,
You can go ahead.
hello. My name is Heather Langell. I'm sorry, I'm having some issues with my a new camera. There we are. Hello, my name is Heather Langell. I live at 15 Blossomfield Court in Ottawa, Ontario. I spend quite a bit of time in Lunenburg. I grew up here and I am the daughter of Benjamin and Roxana Smith. I'm very proud of being from Lunenburg. I try to follow local news and events as much as I can, and I certainly have followed with interest and discussed with my parents the various proposals of the town council, including peripherally the vending proposal. However, I was completely taken by surprise and dismayed to only find out a couple of days ago that there was a proposal to put a food truck or allow a food truck to rent a space directly opposite, steps away from my parents' front door. I have had the opportunity to communicate with Ms. Wendy Wynot McKenzie, who grew up next door to me, who is the daughter also of elderly parents in the street. And she also was completely unaware, despite taking a very active interest in her parents' health and welfare. And this is what I'd like to specifically address with council is the concerning lack of transparency and consultation specific to that proposed location. That proposed location is a residential neighborhood. It is a park where children play and families go to enjoy leisure time. And it's an area that my parents in their elderly years, and I know from speaking with Wendy on many occasions and her parents that Mr. and Mrs. Wynot also enjoy very, very much. They enjoy seeing families go by. They enjoy watching the children play. They enjoy sitting on their porch and talking to their neighbors. I am very concerned and disappointed in council that there wasn't consultation with people most affected by this. Because had I been aware that this was being considered at an earlier date, I certainly would have taken a much more active interest on my parents' behalf in letting their views known to you, as would they. I just would like to appeal to your sense of respect to elderly citizens, your sense of decency, that whatever you decide for the greater good of the town in terms of food trucks, that you not impact residents at this location. We've heard many compelling submissions this evening, and I have heard Ms. Funk's submission on behalf of her business. Sounds like she has an absolutely lovely business, and I think I would absolutely enjoy patronizing it. But with respect, I do not want it steps from my parents' front door and all of the issues that a business of that sort, no matter how conscientious the owner is, can entail in terms of traffic, in terms of garbage, in terms of noise, which can occur sometimes due to the electronics and electricity generating and heat generating devices associated with that business, and sometimes associated with the patrons. There can be garbage issues despite everybody's best intentions, and many of the business owners who have presented to you have outlined in great detail the issues with garbage and with the public loitering and with safety. So I am just asking you to please consider some very dedicated and hardworking elderly residents of Green Street, and please remove that spot as a potential location for a vendor. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention.
Thank you, Heather. Do we have anyone else? Yep, okay.
Very difficult for them to see. I was taking it into account on the computer. You can go ahead. Pat Myers. Hello. We can't hear you. Can you turn your microphone on? We have you unmuted on this end.
Hello, sorry about that. Can you hear me there now?
That's much better. Go ahead.
Perfect. My name is Matthew Kerr. I live at 58 Cumberland Street in Lunenburg. My wife and I moved here about 3 years ago, right at the during the first lockdown, I guess. We moved from Ontario to Lunenburg. Previously, I had only visited here for one weekend and just fell in love with the place. The vistas, the views, everything, the whole vibe of the town. So we made our way here. I'm a resounding no on all the issues raised here today, 100%. My major holdups on it are definitely the parking and the bathroom. I'm an employee on King Street.
We may have lost you. Can you move back in the room where you were a moment ago?
All right, Trevor, if there's anybody waiting, maybe we can move on to them and then circle back to Matthew.
I don't see anyone else in the list.
Okay. Just give it a couple seconds. I hate
Yeah.
to do this, but if there's no connection, then
Appears to be gone.
okay, we've lost the connection. All right. We'll offer one final opportunity to anyone who's here or anyone online before we seek a motion to close the public hearing. Yeah. Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Shaw. I live at 63 Bulmer Road Center. I own the ice cream shop Sweet Treasures at 110 Montague. And there are a lot of things I could say about this, but I feel like they've mostly been covered. But my business is a business that is easily run out of a food truck. Ice cream food trucks, so common. I'd argue the most common. There was nothing protecting me from having an ice cream food truck parked across the street from me. And I think that that is a huge problem and something really important to take into account. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the property, renovating the property. I pay, I think, almost $16,000 a year in property tax to run a seasonal business, which I operate approximately 4 to 5 months of the year. So, you know, I'm paying about $3,000 a month in property tax for the time that I am open. It would be very hard for me to compete with a business across the street selling the same product and paying $2 a day for a vending permit fee. And I just thought that that was important to note as a different perspective from the restaurants. It's not just about the restaurants and having a place to sit and eat. People mostly take my product to go. Thank you.
Sylvia?
We do have Matt Kerr back on the line.
We'll take Sylvia and then go back to
Perfect.
Matthew online.
Hi, thank you for listening to me and thank you for having this meeting.
Sylvia, if you can just state your name and
Oh,
address.
Sylvia Mauser, 49 Heb Street. My question is, and it was mentioned to washrooms, with the food trucks, are you going to be putting porta potties around? Or are they going to be running to restaurants to use the washrooms? And like if there's 3 food trucks over on Tannery Road, are they going to be running to the Lightship to use the bathroom? Because washrooms are an issue in this town. I was just wondering.
I'll refer that question to planning staff for an answer. Suspect I know it.
The issue with, I guess, the workers and their access to washrooms, they would have to either close their vending operation and go back home or go to a public washroom, like the washroom facilities we have on Blue Nose Drive.
What about the client, the customers? Because I was working in a shop downtown last summer and there were so many people coming in looking for washrooms. And you think if you're putting food trucks around, there's going to be more people looking for washrooms, and seems to be lacking in this town. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. All right, unless I see anybody else.
We do have the gentleman on.
Oh, yes, we have Matthew. Sorry, my apologies.
You can go ahead, Matt.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me back on. Sorry about that. As I mentioned before, my big holdups are the bathrooms and the parking on these issues. I mentioned I work down on King Street in the gym there. I've had 10 or 20 people come in interrupting me during sessions looking to use the washroom. Sure, we'll let them, but again, that's not what we're there for. When it comes to the parking, originally my facility was up at the old fire hall where we had parking. We decided to stay in that beautiful, or move to that beautiful spot down on King Street where we had a little bit of paid parking. Now a lot of that's going to be taken up by food trucks, so we're definitely not happy about that. Again, going back to the bathrooms, my wife takes the dog for a walk and she sees grown men urinating behind town hall. So we definitely need to address that. I guess that's about it for me, and thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Matthew. All right. One final time, I'm going to see if anybody wants to come up, or we're going to have a motion of council to close the public hearing. All right, I don't see anyone. So if somebody from council would like to move to close the public hearing portion of the meeting, moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by Councillor Ernst. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. So I just want to inform the gallery that means that the public hearing portion of the meeting is closed. And council will deliberate on the bylaw after this, but there will be no comment from the public gallery. And I've been pretty lenient up until this point with clapping to express support for positions stated, but I'd appreciate it if there was no clapping or other kinds of outbursts of noise while council is deliberating the bylaw. Thank you. All right, that takes us on to correspondence. 6.1 Lyme Disease Awareness Month proclamation. There's a request there and a draft motion. If it is anybody's pleasure to move that motion as circulated, moved by Councillor Ernst, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, that takes us on to unfinished business, which is the vending bylaw, presentation, and second reading. There's a draft motion there, but I suspect the council will have a lot of questions for planning staff before we get to that, so I will open the floor for questions. And in keeping with council tradition, I will recognize Councillor Halverson for the first question.
Sorry, Susan, I got line of sight on you. Yeah. Before I get into a couple questions, and there's a lot to digest here, and I first want to acknowledge everyone who spoke tonight. Thank you for bringing your concerns forward. Sincerely, it's going to really help in crafting a bylaw that makes sense. I'll leave it at that. My next question I'd like to pose to our CAO, to Chair. A lot of talk tonight about a lack of transparency and a lack of consultation. Perhaps could someone explain what is the process involved in generating a bylaw like this? What did staff do? How did they come up and arrive at this proposed bylaw?
To Chair to Councillor Halverson, thank you for the question. First, we'll go back to the original motion.
Sorry, Jamie, can you just get a little closer to your mic? I'm finding people can't hear us unless we're fairly
booster
close.
seat. I'm not that tall.
You're going to use height as an excuse here, really? For
I get it
for
all day.
volume?
I get it all day from him, so I can use it at my own advantage. So I'll go back, as I mentioned, to the original motion. It did suggest staff bring back a report and a draft vending bylaw. The process followed is typical process for a bylaw to be enacted. It's not to suggest that further consultation isn't appropriate either. Following motions of council is administration's job. So by all means, we could go back and do more consultation. That's not an issue. More so getting this bylaw through first reading onto a public hearing, just as we are now or have done, so we can hear comments and feedback from the public on the matter. Then, of course, council debates, as we're going to do now, and either can approve it, refuse it, or send it back to staff for further revisions or consultation, or anything that they see fit.
I guess I'd like to hear a little more about, again, we were talking about consultation, but what is the process? How does staff arrive at a bylaw that, when we're crafting one from scratch, is it something, do we look to other jurisdictions? Are we whiteboarding this? How does that work?
Through the Chair to Councillor Halverson, this started before I arrived, and I won't use that as an excuse at all. But what I'll suggest is that when it comes to consultation outside of the normal legislative process, there's no real roadmap. You kind of have to go by your feeling and what it is, and this is the regulated process for public input. Now, I could ask the Director of Community Development to understand their process if they've done anything differently. It appears not, but it doesn't mean it can't be deferred to happen.
If I can indulge council for another moment or two, I'd like to get I wanted to get the process out so people understood how we arrived at where we are now. And I think it's also really important to understand that this is the moment to receive this input, right? So for people who are saying they're not heard, this is what we're here for tonight, is to hear you. Thanks, Martine. I did sit down with Martine. I sat down with Adam, and I appreciate you both giving me time to explain your position a few weeks ago. We've heard from other people. We've heard lots of correspondence. What I'm hearing is, we've got a lot of businesses here who don't feel like there's a level playing field. There's been a lack of communication. And there's some things I think to be considered, to Melissa's point, I think, in how these sites are selected. One of my questions was actually going to be to staff to find out how these 7 sites, if they decide to go ahead with these 7 sites, how it's determined what businesses go there. Is an evaluation process, because I haven't seen any of that yet. We obviously don't want to have an ice cream truck set up next to an ice cream shop. We don't want to have a pizza truck set to a pizza shop, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I think from my point of view, I don't feel like this is a fully baked at this point. I think we've got a lot of work to do in this before we put this forward. And I'll leave it open to the rest of the council, because I'm sure all the rest of you have as much input as I want to provide. But there's just a lot here that, we haven't dealt with, that this bylaw doesn't deal with. It doesn't deal with noise. I reached out to the head of the Nova Scotia Food Truck Association to get their feedback. And a couple of their comments were, you'd need to have receptacles. The vendors need to provide receptacles. And I see that now in the bylaw. They talked about noise. I mentioned about the generators, and he said, well, what you should be looking at is inverters instead, something with a lower noise threshold, something around 70 decibels, which, I'm not how much you guys know about sound, but that's about what we're speaking at right now. You can actually have a conversation over 70 decibels. So yeah, there are ways, and thank you, Gordon. He's not here anyway, somewhere, for bringing up his points too. I think there's work to be done here. There's more to be discovered. I think this should go back to staff. Perhaps our time tonight might be better spent identifying some of the issues that were brought forward, and leave those with staff to come back with more suggestions at a later date.
So I'd leave it with other counselors, but I'll hold that to see if it needs to be a motion here in a
Yes,
second.
that's fine.
But before that, I'd like to get other
absolutely.
counselors to weigh in with any questions or comments they might have. Counselor Sanford, and then I have Counselor Bertle.
I agree with Counselor Halverson, and the first number of questions that came for me were in the context of process. And I feel my question was, how do we arrive at those 7 sites? Like, how do we get from 0 to those 7 sites? I'd be interested in understanding that. But as I listen to folks, and again, thank you to Councillor Halverson's point, for everybody that took the time tonight that have shared their thoughts. And also for those of you that communicated with email, I really appreciated getting your emails because as I said in my responses to folks, it helps us to make informed decisions when we know what it is, the issues that you're bringing forward. And for those that reached out for meetings and met with us, I appreciate your time and again, your thoughts. But my biggest question of all is how do we get, speaking to the transparency piece, how do we get from 0 to not being transparent? And that's what I want as a part of what we're doing. I think we have to go back to staff, but I also think that we as in staff, CAO and council need to look at how or what our expectations are. Yes, a lot of us are new and we're working our way through this, but I would say that we're all keen to have transparency. That's what this is all about. So we didn't get this right this time. So I think equally important to the issue is for us to be able to understand better the process and the beginning to the end of the process. So as chair of the PAC committee, I don't feel that I was prepared. So when I only had 2 people show up for the PAC committee about the vending bylaw and neither person spoke publicly, I thought, geez, this isn't an issue for anybody. Well, how wrong could I be, right? So again, I'm really glad you're here and I'm glad that you're taking the time to address this. And I agree, this has to go back to staff.
Okay,
Thank
just
you.
before I move on from you, Counselor Sanford, do you want staff to answer the question about the 7 sites?
Yes, please. How do we get there? How do we get to those 7 sites?
Through the chair. It goes really back to April, May of 2022, when Amy Funk made her presentation. She outlined some areas in town, particularly to Tannery Road. We looked at the streets, Pelham Street and Lincoln Street. There's just no room on the sidewalks to accommodate any on-site, on-street vending activity. So we tried to put it in an area where there is at least a wide sidewalk. I wish to point out that the maps are only general representation of the vending spots. They're not the exact location of the vending spot. They're subject to the approval of the town engineer under our streets bylaw and pursuant to the Motor Vehicle Act. So when we thought about Tannery Road, first, we only had 1 site on Tannery Road. But through staff, we felt at that time that just having 4 or 5 additional spots might not do it. So we thought maybe there was enough room for 2 more vending spots on Tannery Road. We were not thinking about lunch trucks or food trucks at the time for those 2 additional spaces because I believe there's not enough room there for those vending operations. What we were thinking were more associated with arts and crafts and painters that are set up their easel on the waterfront paint and they want to sell their wares. So these are just vending spots. They're not lunch food truck spots. So that was the rationale, basically.
Thank you, Arthur. I have Councillor Bertels next.
Thank you. I also want to say I agree with both Councillor Haverson and Councillor Stanford. Sorry, a little nervous because I have everybody staring at me right now, but it's all good. I do appreciate everybody coming out this evening and voicing their concerns. I did meet with Adam, had a great conversation with him. I phoned Catherine because I hadn't heard from her and I just wanted to touch base and say, you know, how do you feel about this? I also apologized to them saying this is not what I thought it was going to be. When I viewed the map, I was blown away. I don't want this. If I was Kevin Rayfuse sitting on his front doorstep, I don't want to be looking at a food truck. I don't. If I want to walk my dog down on Blue Nose Drive, I don't want to hear the machines going and my dog scared shitless. Sorry for the bad word, but I hear everybody's concerns and I appreciate you coming out. And I just hope we can work together going forward. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. And notwithstanding the vernacular, I'll issue a general reminder to councilors to keep their language parliamentary. I have the deputy mayor next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to go back, like I'm surprised when we talk about transparency because I've been in council for 3 times and I never see where we're holding back information from the public. The information's there. It's not always generally, it may be not in your view, but it's also your responsibility to engage as well, right? So when we go back to the first reading, actually, I did chair that meeting and I fumbled around with it a little bit because I wasn't sure, but the one message that was clear is this is our opportunity to read it, understand it, ask council and staff of questions. So, and that brings us to this point here, which we're all here and we're seeing your thoughts and your views in public. And it's more meaningful when you're here. Certainly it's more meaningful than a conversation in the street. It's much more meaningful than an email or a letter sometimes. And it gives us all the opportunity to hear you and really feel the emotion in your message. And the message I heard tonight, also as that first reading went on, it was my opportunity as well to really dig into the information. We get our agenda packages on a Wednesday and our meeting is on a Tuesday. So sometimes issues this large, you can't digest all in once. So the process is relatively fair. You have your first reading, it's made general to the public, and it gives us all the opportunity to dig into it and look at it. So as I'm hearing some of your letters and seeing some of your inputs and looking at it more thoroughly myself, I've asked questions to staff along the way, and it brought out some legitimate concerns, and they were all expressed here tonight: location, noise, garbage, equity, and safety. So, based on that, I think it is prudent that we send this back to staff and reevaluate it. And perhaps the lesson learned here is maybe we'll do a little more from the staff perspective. If they bring this back, they might do a little more public, consultation in areas where it's a little more intense. So we may come back with a better bylaw and hopefully it will go through it on the second reading and it'll be more satisfying for everyone.
Thank you to the deputy mayor. I have Councillor Duggan.
I just want to echo the same stuff that's been said here. I don't think that we got this right the first time. I do think that my concerns are around the noise, the pollution. I'd like to prohibit or at the very least limit generator use. I think we need to take a second look at the fees that we're proposing and the fairness of those as far as brick and mortar businesses go. I would like to know how the number of sites were chosen. I know that Susan asked how the sites themselves were chosen, but I'm curious to know how we got to 7 as a number. And I think
Arthur,
the
if you can
other,
answer that.
yeah, I'll finish actually, and then Arthur can answer. But the other thing that I don't think was taken into consideration was the taking away of parking spaces in the core downtown area and the bathroom use. I mean, that's always been an issue in town, and I think that that would continue to be a much larger issue if we passed as is. So just wondering what your thoughts are.
Through the chair, we certainly acknowledge the issue with taking away, you know, very valuable parking spaces downtown. We know that's been the issue even with Bike Nova Scotia trying to make a pedestrian mall and a bike lane down Montague Street. So we're well aware of that situation. So that played a factor trying to limit proposed locations. We came up with one where the pop-up for the CCP was. We felt that went really well at that location, and we thought that that could make a great vending spot. We saw the people being interested in trying to provide vending along the harbor, so we thought a spot on Blue Nose Drive would be very important if we were able to accommodate them. We have seaweed tours down there and the hack and trolley operation currently that seems to be working with not too many issues that I'm aware of. Again, Tannery Road was an issue. We provided one spot and then we thought maybe it could handle 2 more. In retrospect, I wish now that we didn't include those 2 additional spaces. So that'll be one thing. So, you know, staff will review if and when council refers it back to staff. Thank you.
I have Councillor Halverson next.
Thanks again. I just also want to point out here, I don't want to think we're dumping on staff here. This is, you guys have done journeyman's work here to try and craft a bylaw, and that's why we're all here now. We have a starting point. We've had discussions, and we're going to, you know, tailor this to make it work for Lunenburg. So please don't feel like staff did anything wrong. They did exactly what we've asked them to do, and they should be commended for that. So I want to get that out there. The next point I had, though, through the chair to Arthur, the intention now in crafting this vending bylaw was to ensure there was no missed overlap if we were going to vacate the land use bylaw. So where does that leave us at this point? Is there something, can that be delayed, or is there something that we should pass an interim that pulls perhaps some of these things out of the vending bylaw to allow that to go forward?
Sorry, just to clarify, Councillor Halverson, I think you meant the land use bylaw there at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I may, through the chair, I would recommend that council stay both motions for tonight. I think both should be approved the same evening, and then we'll be able to do the effective date of the publication of the approval ad at the same time, so that there's no gap in the process. So if we can, it'd be best to approve both at the same time. So I would recommend holding off on the vending bylaw and holding off on the amendment to the land use bylaw as well.
Thank you. I have Councillor Sanford next. Yeah.
So I just want to take a few minutes because I want to be able to say my piece, because I've been waiting for this. I've been working on this. I've been listening to people and having conversations, and I don't want to leave tonight without having the opportunity to have a say. Aside from the process piece, and I think we need to go back to the table because we obviously don't have that right. I think what I'm hearing is that there were basically 5 areas that stood out for me. One is the historical, cultural preservation of Old Town. We live here because it's Old Town and it's heritage. People have businesses here because it's Old Town and it's heritage. And I had somebody very passionately explain to me growing up here what that means to them. But I think it's that aspect that has brought many of us here, me included with my husband. So we have to ask ourselves, do we want to jeopardize that culture that we've created by changing it in this way? And I hear a resounding no, definitely not. And I would personally be in that realm. I think about the brick and mortar businesses, and not only is it about the tax base that people have already raised and about the number of employees and a place to eat in the winter. I want us to think a little deeper about the challenges, and somebody mentioned it earlier, that COVID has brought to those brick and mortar businesses. You can't get people to work. And look at the lengths that we've heard some of our folks have to go to. They've had to buy housing to attract employees so that they can stay here and work. We're bringing in foreign workers. There are so many side effects. I was saying to my husband, it's like having a hangover from COVID that people are trying to work through in order to get their feet back underneath them and to get their businesses back to where they need to be. But I think we'd be very superficial when we say, oh, you know, went down 3 times last summer, couldn't get a seat at the restaurant. I was ticked. I went back home and did, cook my supper or whatever. I think we need to take a deeper look there because we're not acknowledging all the great work that's happened. So yes, somebody has mentioned Martin did Bar Salvador, right? In an effort to try and respond to some of the demand. Adam has bought Big Reds. He has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars there, getting ready to open for the season. We look at the folks at the Smoke Pit Barbecue who built that amazing rooftop deck. Can't wait to get up there, right? And then we have the Knot Pub with that nice outdoor patio that they built. We've got Lightship over there. Again, a lot of money's been spent over there. Kelly's over there now with Boathouse Bites. I think we really need to get behind our businesses, recognize what investments they've been making for the community in their businesses, and we need to stand behind them. Through this, one gentleman, Stuart, maybe spoke about this is the most challenging time for our businesses. And I think that we as a community and as council need to recognize and understand that and support our brick and mortar businesses. I want to talk for a minute about Tannery Road. I live on Montague Street. And I said to my husband, when I saw the map and there were those 3 sites on Tannery Road, I said, my goodness. I said, if a food truck pulled up across the street from me, we pay almost $6,000 in taxes. I would have a meltdown. So I went online and I looked at some of the houses. I picked about 6 of them on Tannery Road just to see what they pay in taxes. Looked on Viewpoint for the projected taxes for 2023. And I thought we had it bad and I need to stop whining. But, you've got people over there that are paying over $7,000 in taxes, 6,552, 7,408, 9,613. Like, let's be real. And we're going to park a food truck out in front of their driveway. And that doesn't take into account the Tannery Road itself and the hazard that it's created. And people have already spoken to that, about that hairpin turn. So I think there's more to it. It's not just a superficial look. This is serious business and it needs the time and the preparation and the attention to the detail. So I'm glad it's going to go back to staff. And I agree with Councillor Halverson. I recognize it's really hard to put a draft together of something. It's a good beginning point. It's a good point to start the conversation. And I think we can do better as we go forward, but I'm going to look forward to what comes next based on what the feedback that was given tonight has been given to staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Sanford. My sense is that the consensus of council is that items 7.1 and 7.2 be deferred to a future meeting so that staff have the opportunity to take everything into consideration that's been said here tonight, submitted online or otherwise brought to our attention. And obviously people are encouraged as we go through that process to continue to bring things to staff's attention. I would, before I close that portion of the meeting, say that I would echo Councillor Halverson's commendation of planning staff. There's been a lot of planning work, urban planning work that we've been behind on in terms of modernizing with respect to the town, because we've historically underinvested in planning. And tonight is the introduction of the most recent planning staff person. So it's taken this long to get planning staff and our community development team fully staffed. And I just want to commend them because they've been working tirelessly to modernize things on a number of fronts, not just this one, that need an overall modernization. And I think the entire community owes them their gratitude for that work. So with that, I think that everybody is probably here mostly for the vending issue, although you are all welcome to stay and encouraged to stay and watch the rest of the deliberations. But I think with council's permission and unanimous consent, I will call for a 10-minute recess and we will reconvene at 8:30. Lunenburg Alliance Deluxe, all those. Yeah. Okay. See, I did get to make. I kind of, I knew.
Good.
Well.
You're,
That's what we like to see.
well, yeah, your worship, we are live.
I'm always warm. Okay, we've got a half an hour left until we're obliged to adjourn, failing the unanimous consent of council to continue. So I will call the meeting back to order. There are no committee meeting minutes, recommendations, reports, and notices of motion. So that takes us on to new business. 9.1 Old Town Lunenburg Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw update. We have our esteemed senior planner and heritage officer here with us to provide said update.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, everyone who decided to stick around. And for those watching at home, I appreciate it. For the public record, I am Hillary Grant. I am the new Senior Planner and Heritage Officer for the town of Lunenburg, and I'm very pleased to be providing an update on the Old Town Lunenburg Heritage Conservation Plan and Bylaw. For clarity, this is an information update, so no decision is expected tonight. The Heritage Conservation Plan and Bylaw will, at minimum, go to a public participation meeting and a public hearing for consideration by council. So as you know, this has been an ongoing project for some time. Brighter Community Planning and Consulting, partnering with Evox Strategies, was awarded the contract to prepare a new plan and bylaw December 14th, 2021, and council approved the Heritage Conservation District background study in August 9th, 2022. Staff have been working to tailor Brighter Community's overarching approach to Lunenburg's unique local context. A draft is complete and we're finalizing it currently. We're aiming to take the draft to the Heritage Advisory Committee at the end of the month. However, through our internal review process, staff have made a few changes to the draft plan and bylaw relative to the background study approved in August. First, the transition area has been expanded to meet UNESCO's expectations of a legally enforced buffer zone, both in regards to size and location, trying to further wrap the transition area around the district. Second, the boundaries of the 4 other heritage character areas proposed by Brighter Community, those would be civic, commercial, residential, and waterfront, have been changed slightly to correct historical inaccuracies. The statement of significance has been revised to focus more on value over location, and again, to fix a select few historical inaccuracies, as well as to better align the district's recognition across all jurisdictions. So that would be locally, nationally, and internationally. We're also recommending changing contributing and non-contributing, that nomenclature, to character defining and supporting structures. Every building in the district contributes to the district, and character defining is consistent with Canadian terminology under the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada.
Thank you, Hillary. Are there any questions of Hillary at this stage for the information report?
Your mic is on. Mike, do you have a question?
I'm just leaving the time go so Councillor Ernst has time to put his mic on. I'm amazed here. Like, okay, if nobody else has one, I just have one, Hillary, insofar as, like, I appreciate what you've done here. I appreciate that the version is a new logic, right, to what was proposed before, and I'm okay with that. But so the buffer zone at the back of town, I think, seems quite sparse and lopsided compared to the front of town, so the northeast as opposed to the southwest. And I'm just like, I'm sure this will come up in the public participation and the public hearing and all that stuff. But for my own purposes, I'd be quite happy for that to include everything effectively south of the bypass road from the Kissing Bridge to the east end of town, which would provide an overall buffer around the whole district as you've laid it out. So I'm just wondering why that route wasn't chosen, because it just looks like that area is sparse compared to the other district, and what effect that would have on any future plans council might have for its properties in those areas.
Thank you so much. So to give some more context, in Brighter Communities' initial proposal, they included a transition area of 16.4 hectares. The current UNESCO buffer zone is 32.44 hectares and consists almost exclusively of town-owned lands. This is not considered best practice for the management of a heritage district. The current proposed transition area is 47.5 hectares, so a significant improvement. The World Heritage Committee has recommended that every World Heritage site globally should have a legally enforceable buffer zone, and Municipal Council is the only body in Canada who can impose said buffer zone under Canadian law. So again, just some thoughts on that. One of the interesting cases and something that we are exploring internally as staff is how much we can change the proposed boundaries relative to the background study. This is something that's a little legally nebulous. We have taken this new map to Kevin Barrett with the province, and he says that this minor change will not require a new background study. So we did try to limit our modifications as much as possible. Also, council gave very clear direction that one of the goals of the Heritage Conservation District Plan and bylaw was to have unity and consistency across the town's major planning documents. Currently, the portion of land north of Old Town leading towards the back harbor is zoned medium and high density residential with a height limit of 10.5 meters or approximately 3 stories. So that is already considered to be somewhat compatible with the architectural character of Old Town and would require a rezoning to change, hence a council motion. The transition area does have a lighter touch than the rest of the areas that are currently being proposed in the district. There's more opportunity to explore more sharply contrasting architectural styles, and there's less regulation around materiality. So what materials can be used in new construction. So it's at council's discretion whether they would like to extend the buffer zone. Again, that can be debated at a later meeting, and certainly staff can follow up and really dive into exactly what that would entail.
Yeah, no, and I think that's best left for the public participation meeting at the Heritage Committee and at council meetings. And public hearings that will probably outlive my tenure anyway, but I just wanted to raise the question here tonight to get an answer. So any other questions? Deputy Mayor?
Well, not so much a question. It's just like I certainly like what's been presented here. And this is more so what I know in our committee, myself and particularly Jerry Ralston was advocating for this more so than even what the consultants were bringing out. So I really like the work that you've done here.
Any further questions, quick comments? Seeing none. Okay, thank you for the information report, Hillary, on those changes. That takes us on to item 9.2, Sustainable Services Growth Fund. There is a draft motion there. I wonder if the CAO or another staff person wishes to speak to that quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be as quick as possible. Normally, I don't like surprises from the province, but this one I'll oblige. We received a grant for the amount of $375,867 to be used in such things as housing development, seniors and long-term care, accessibility, active transportation, things of that nature. This motion is required just for yourself, Mr. Mayor, and me to enter into an agreement to say, thank you for the money, we'll take it, and we'll follow the rules. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
$400,000 in free money. No good set of Lunenburgers is going to turn that down. So if somebody just wants to make the motion, moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by Councillor Halverson. Councillor Halverson on a question or a comment?
Yeah, just if we can just find out, I mean, I see housing development, seniors, accessibility active is, I mean, again, I know this was a surprise, but is there anything earmarked that we could point this money to at this point, or we just put it in general funds and find a use for it? I know there's no shortage of projects, but.
Yeah, I'd suggest the later, Councillor Halverson, as something I could point in many directions. So we'll accept the money, of course, gladly, and then figure out where it's best suited and bring it forward as required.
I was gonna say, which project in the backlog do you want to put it to? Okay, any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. That takes us on to 9.3, Regional Anti-Racism and Anti-Discrimination Committee, and I will turn it over to the CAO to briefly present his report on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, for the opportunity to finally speak to this item. It's been a long time coming, bringing this forward to you all, but it is in regarding the anti-racism and anti-discrimination regional initiative. As for the public record, for those that are left, my name is Jamie Doyle, I'm the Chief Administrative Officer. The report that you would have seen outlines recommended next steps to form a regional anti-racism and anti-discrimination committee and hire a regional coordinator. It'd be much like our accessibility coordinator in that modeling. To further advance an MOU, it's a memorandum of understanding between the 5 participating communities. That would also mean the dissolution of our current local committee, the Town of Lunenburg's Anti-Racism Special Committee. Administration should be noted, we're incredibly appreciative of the work that's been conducted by that committee and welcome those members to participate in the recruitment process when we get there for the regional committee. You'll notice a proposed financial scenario within the documents you have for the recruitment of the coordinator. However, I'd recommend that come forward with the operational budget here in the coming months and for consideration at that time. Of note, the 5 participating communities are at relatively the same stage with this process. So they've all are in process or have taken it to their respective councils for approval, and most have also done the same thing for the funding portion. Much like the model of the accessibility coordinator, this position will be housed in the municipality of Chester and spending days throughout the region as Ellen does. With that, Mr. Mayor, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Jamie. There are 3 motions there. I think we're willing to pass those as omnibus, moved by Councillor Duggan, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. And just under the wire at 8:43, there being no further business, I declare the meeting adjourned.